When people ask who the richest person on earth really is, they often imagine a dramatic reveal. A hidden tycoon, a secret royal fortune, someone richer than every name on every list. But the deeper story is less cinematic and more important. The real issue is not usually one mysterious individual sitting above the rankings. It is that billionaire lists, while useful, are systematically incomplete. They show a lot, but not everything. And the missing parts tell us something serious about how wealth and power can hide in plain sight. Public rankings such as Forbes work by assembling estimates from visible information. That includes stakes in listed companies, current stock prices, real estate, private business holdings, debts, court records, mandatory disclosures, and company reports. In many cases, these estimates are built from real and substantial evidence. They are not random guesses, but they are still estimates, not bank statements. Even very public fortunes can be harder to pin down than they look. Shares may be pledged as collateral. Assets may sit inside foundations. Some holdings can be locked up, tied to options, or legally assigned to other entities. A headline number may look precise down to the decimal, yet the underlying reality is often messier. That said, the strongest case for the reliability of these lists is also clear. Wealth tied to public companies is relatively transparent. Share prices are public. Large holdings are often reportable. Analysts, journalists, and regulators all examine them. If someone owns a large stake in a giant listed business, that fortune is usually easier to track than almost any other kind of wealth on Earth. And the scale of what is visible is already enormous. Public lists report thousands of billionaires with combined wealth in the tens of trillions. Figures from Forbes and UBS both point to a large, global, growing, super-rich class. So the right conclusion is not that billionaire rankings are fake. It is that they are informative but partial. They capture visible wealth much better than wealth buried under layered ownership structures. The first major blind spot is private companies. Some of the largest fortunes in the world are connected to family-controlled conglomerates that are not publicly traded. Without a daily market price, any estimate depends on comparisons with similar companies, along with judgments about profits, assets, debt, and discounts for illiquidity, control, and limited information. That means cautious valuation can understate a private fortune in economic reality. A private business empire may have tremendous strategic value, access, and cash-generating power that is hard to translate neatly into a ranking. But there is also a trap in the opposite direction. It is analytically false to treat a company's full revenue, or the broad scale of a family business, as if it were one person's personal net worth. A huge enterprise is not the same thing as liquid personal wealth. The second blind spot is beneficial ownership. An asset may be officially held by a company, a holding structure, a foundation, a trust, a nominee, or a trustee, while the real controller or beneficiary is only partly visible on paper. This is where the public record can become thin very quickly. International bodies have tried to address that problem. The OECD and the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, report progress on beneficial ownership registers. But they also keep identifying recurring weaknesses: incomplete coverage, poor verification, limited access, inconsistent definitions, and weak cross-border linkage. In simple terms, many systems still do not connect the dots well enough. A person may control wealth across multiple structures and jurisdictions, without that control becoming easy to map from public documents. The third blind spot is the family network. Major fortunes are often not concentrated in one person's name. They may be split across siblings, cousins, children, foundations, and separate legal entities. On paper, that can make each individual look smaller than the wider network really is. And even if investigators can identify the pieces, difficult questions remain. Who actually controls the voting rights? Who can sell? Who receives distributions? Who merely benefits indirectly? Those are not always the same thing. A fourth blind spot comes from trusts and foundations. Here, legal ownership, influence, and beneficiary rights can diverge sharply. One person may no longer legally own assets, yet still retain influence over how they are managed. Another may be named as a beneficiary, but have limited present access. Whether wealth in a trust should count in one individual's ranking can depend on private details that outsiders simply do not know. Then there is the offshore world. The Panama Papers and Paradise Papers showed that offshore structures are widespread and often legal. That matters because legality is not the same as transparency. A structure can comply with the law and still make wealth much harder to measure. Opacity by itself is enough to weaken any estimate. And not all difficult wealth sits in companies or financial accounts. Art, jewels, classic cars, vineyards, yachts, aircraft, trophy real estate, and resource-linked wealth all create additional valuation problems. Some of these assets are highly illiquid. Some trade only rarely. Some depend on expert opinion more than market pricing. Resource-linked wealth can be especially hard to measure where business influence overlaps with political power or control over extraction rights. This is where sensational claims often rush in. People hear that a monarch, a ruling family, or a political inner circle controls palaces, land, companies, or national resources, and then conclude that these figures must be richer than the billionaires on public lists. But this is exactly where careful analysis matters most. The strongest evidence against many of these dramatic claims is that they often mix together very different things: state assets, crown property, public funds, and private wealth. Those are not interchangeable categories. A ruler may have access to immense resources without personally owning them in a way that belongs in an individual net worth ranking. If we blur the line between public and private property, we stop measuring wealth and start measuring political reach in a much looser sense. Still, there remains a genuine high uncertainty zone. The exact net worth of people who use multiple jurisdictions, nominees, trustees, foundations, and politically protected networks, especially near state power, is poorly knowable in principle. That is not because no one is trying. It is because some wealth structures are designed in ways that fragment visibility across legal systems, intermediaries, and confidential arrangements. At a certain point, the absence of clean proof is part of the story. So yes, some people or families may be richer than any published list suggests. That possibility is real. But clean proof is often unavailable, and the most confident viral claims usually run ahead of the evidence. Why does all this matter? Not because the public needs perfect curiosity-satisfying rankings, but because wealth opacity has real consequences. It affects taxation, inheritance oversight, competition policy, sanctions, political influence, and democratic accountability. If authorities cannot see who ultimately owns or controls major assets, it becomes harder to enforce rules fairly. That does not mean every detail of private wealth must be publicly exposed to everyone. The goal is not total public transparency in every case, but institutions need enough visibility to identify beneficial owners, enforce tax law, apply sanctions, oversee inheritance, and understand when economic concentration turns into political leverage. In the end, known billionaire lists are indispensable. For visible wealth, especially fortunes rooted in public markets, they are often credible and surprisingly informative. They give us a valuable map of the super-rich world, but they are not the whole territory. Private companies, family networks, trusts, foundations, offshore structures, hard-to-value luxury assets, resource-linked fortunes, and state-linked environments all create zones where wealth becomes only partly measurable. The biggest truth is not that one secret name definitely tops every ranking. It is that structural blind spots mean real concentrations of wealth and power can remain obscured even when the visible numbers are already staggering. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, enable notifications, and tell us in the comments which hidden system of power or money we should explore next.